Welcome to my channel. I am JCM Byrne, author of Wistful Ascending and a few other books. And this is Book Burning, a show where I talk about books and comics and movies, but I promise to never ever burn a book. So today, I want to talk a little more about magic. Before I do, I'm going to rewind a bit. What is magic? And I talked about this before. You should watch earlier episodes where I define these things, but I'm going to do a brief recap. I promise I'll be brief. So overall, we're talking about genre fiction. Genre fiction is fiction where impossible things happen. These are the categories we think of as science fiction, fantasy, supernatural horror. It's all genre fiction. Impossible things happen. Ghosts, vampires, spaceships, stuff like that. And fantasy is stuff where that impossible stuff is blamed or attributed to magic as opposed to technology. They don't have really good windmills, they have wizards. I should make a book, Wizards versus Windmills. Anyway, Don Quixote will have to handle that topic on his own. So that's magic. Magic is just stuff that's called magic versus called technology or machines. And what we're talking about today is hard and soft magic, awful or awesome. And you get to think about this and decide for yourself. Now, I first heard this notion of hard versus soft magic or magic systems from Brandon Sanderson, I think. I'm not saying he invented it. I'm saying that's where I became acquainted with the notion. Maybe other people talked about this before. I don't know. Frankly, I don't particularly care. It's not a history discussion. And what Brandon Sanderson means is very well defined by a hard and soft magic system. Has to do with internal consistency. What that means is within the confines of the story, does the magic work or seem to work in a consistent way throughout the story, from chapter to chapter, from day to day, across different characters within the scope of the story? Or does it seem to have effects that are sort of willy-nilly, unordered, unpredictable, where magic stuff just happens and no one really understands the why, the reasons, or the wherefores of any of it? And with a story where the magic is very highly consistent, that is, it works in a very consistent sort of regimented way. You do X, Y happens. You do Z, B happens, whatever. That's a hard magic system. And a soft magic system would be one where you don't really know what's going to happen. It's mysterious, it's wondrous, it's not knowable. It's part of the unknown, how the magic's going to work and what it's going to do. So you might at first think, well, why would either of these be good or bad? And I'll talk about both. So the first thing is, I'm going to start with, you can probably get, maybe you can't, maybe you can guess my preference by now. So I'll start with talking about soft magic systems because it's not really my wheelhouse. So why would you have a soft magic system? Why have a magic system where the effects are not knowable? And you can find lots of reasons. There's a lovely little article, and I forgot to pull up the tab, by N.K. Jemisin. She blogged about this over 10 years ago, and it's called But, Why Does Magic Have to Make Sense? And I'm sure if you just Google N.K. Jemisin, Why Does Magic Have to Make Sense? You can pull this up very quickly. It's a great little blog post. And what she talks about is when the magic is soft, when it does not follow rules, when it doesn't seem to be part of a system or less of a system, you get an increased sense of sort of wonder. It seems more fantastical, more awesome. You want magic to be more like something mysterious and unfathomable, and less like something an engineer would pull off. When you have magic textbooks, it takes away some of the fantasy element of it. So she prefers, or at least is making a case for, these feelings you can get from a softer magic system. Again, I don't know other ways to say it, but sort of repeating some of these ideas, the wondrousness, the mystery, the awe, that you lose something of it when you explain it. It's like there's this cartoon, or I've seen before, I can't remember where it's from. People are looking at the moon, and it's one person says, "Oh, it's so romantic," and the other person is like an astronomer, and they go, "Oh, yes, it's it has this shape because this shadow, and it's in this phase." And the other person goes, "You just ruined it. You ruined the moon for me." And did that really ruin the moon? I don't know, but maybe it takes away some of the romance to hear someone describe it in very mathematical terms. It seems less phenomenal, less amazing. So When you have a soft magic system, it allows more room for it to breathe, more room for it to feel wondrous. So that's a reason to have a soft magic system in your fantasy story. So why have a hard magic system, Joe? Right? You might be wondering, why isn't every magic system lovely and soft and wondrous? And the reason is, I think, there are certain kinds of stories that you can only tell if the magic system follows rules, if it seems systematic, systematized. And that's the kind of story that I personally prefer to read and write, where the characters the characters have magical powers. The characters use magic to solve problems, and when they use magic to solve problems, their solutions only seem clever or sensible or make sense within the narrative storyline if the magic follows rules. So I'm going to give you an example. So Harry Taylor, who does Writing Excuses, he's one of the hosts, always brings this up, or he's brought it up several times, and I love this example. It's from the Harry Dresden novels, from this book Seven Deadbeat. If you haven't read that, it's a lovely book. Go ahead and read it. But if you, I'm going to spoil it for you though, so don't watch the video. So in this story, there's necromancy. Harry's fighting necromancers. You have a couple rules invoked early. One of them is when you raise up an older corpse, it has more power. It makes a better zombie. Okay, so that's a rule within their system. Makes just as much, but it's a known thing. Harry knows this rule. And then we know that Harry can't use necromancy on people, on human corpses. That's a social rule within the setting, that the Wizards Council gets ticked off if you use necromancy on people. That we know Harry would rather not do that for that social reason, which is different than a magical reason or a rule reason. That doesn't make it a hard magic system. So at one point, Harry's got a bunch of necromantic energy, and he invests it in a T-Rex skeleton. So we know they're in a museum. There's this T-Rex skeleton. It's been established early in the book that it's there. So Harry's riding around town on this giant dinosaur zombie. People love this image because it's a fantastic image. It's a wonderful way. But the thing is, the fact that we know from before that there's this rule about these older corpses making more powerful zombies, and then Harry's like, well, this is a really old corpse we have right here, and we know that it's there, and it's hundreds of millions of years old, or something like that. It makes Harry's solution clever. And by being clever, by showing forethought, by showing imagination that he had, it makes the ending and the solution so much more satisfying. If Harry had just gotten lucky and said, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try animating this, and it turned out to be a super powerful zombie, it's like, yeah, great, he got lucky. He didn't really have any reason to think that would work, and it worked. It feels very Deus Ex Machina, like, luck is not a satisfying way to end an action story in general. Maybe there are exceptions, I can't think of any, but we like our heroes to be clever. We like them to win because they've done something that shows some kind of virtue, some sense that they were clever, they thought about it, they had a good plan. They didn't just get lucky. Heroes just get lucky if they're just stronger or tougher. It's not as satisfying. So the fact that Harry could, again, animate the skeleton and beat the bad guys, and it's a great image, this T-Rex zombie running around, eating other zombies and stuff. It's a wonderful image, we love that. But it's also fundamentally satisfying, again, because we knew the rules. Harry knew the rules. Now, do the rules have to be explicit? Do they have to be laid out for the reader? I don't know. I think this is my third time shooting this video because I'm having technical difficulties, which you didn't need to know, but I'm going to tell you anyway, because I keep thinking, I described it this way in a different video. We can add another dimension to this notion of hard versus soft, which is explicit versus implicit. Is the hard magic, are the rules explained to the reader or not? I think that's an interesting dimension to look at. And Brandon Sanderson's famous for these, where the magic system has rules and you know what they are. You are told as the reader at some point in the books how the magic works, so you can figure out the solutions on your own, almost like a mystery novel. There's a plot, but there's mystery, there are clues. You can figure out, how can this situation be resolved? What's the solution to the mystery? How can the characters win based on the rules that you know, that you've absorbed reading the book? You can also have a story like Black Company. Black Company by Glenn Cook, wonderful series. It's a series. I'm not talking about the book, The Black Company by itself, but the series as a whole. There's a lot of powerful magic around, but you don't really ever get the full notion of the rules, but you know they're there because the characters know they're there. Because one character can go to a wizard and say, hey, One Eye, they're coming over the ridge, this, evil, powerful sorcerer. What do we have to worry about? What can he do to us that we should be concerned about, and how do we stop it? And even if One Eye is not as strong as the other guy, not as powerful, not as knowledgeable, he'll have a pretty good notion of the scope of what kind of things they have to worry about, roughly how to counter them, and so on. Because clearly showing that the system follows rules. He doesn't say, gee, I don't know, Croker, magic's just a mystery. Who knows what'll happen? It could be anything. That's not the answer, right? There's clearly a rule base there, even if as the reader, you never really know the rules. And honestly, I don't know if Glenn Cook really wrote out the rules. He's probably, I have no idea. I would guess that he didn't, or he had them very loosely in his mind, but he probably didn't have them written out in a mathematical way like you would need to for like a D&D campaign. Oh, well, this wizard at level 17 can do 6 dice of damage with this spell, but if he's on solid ground, it's an extra 2 dice, that's 8 dice. He probably didn't have anything that explicit written out. I certainly don't. I'll give it away right now in my series. I don't have number values attached. I can tell you my strong thoughts on knowing this makes this stronger, roughly, but I don't say it makes it 1.7 times as strong, even in my own notes. If you're writing lit RPG, you probably need that kind of detail. You want to say this is going to cause 20 extra points of damage, but that'll cause 22 extra points of damage if you cast it that way. That's, again, it's another variation. So an explicit hard magic system is the reader knows all the rules. An implicit hard magic system, it's clear that there are rules, but the reader doesn't necessarily know what they are, but they get the sense that in the universe those rules are known. That's a way that I like to make the distinction. And again, there's nothing wrong with a soft magic system, but you are going to have a hard time telling that kind of story where you are demonstrating the cleverness and the foresight of your characters in their execution of a magical solution if the magic doesn't follow rules. Because again, if Harry if it was impossible to predict what putting that magic in the T-Rex would have done, then doing it wouldn't have been very smart. It might have had the right effect, it might have worked, but it wouldn't have been smart. So that's my thoughts on hard and soft magic. And I think that matches very closely to what Brandon Sanderson has said. I'm not really disagreeing with him or with anyone. I'm just trying to lay out these concepts. If you're writing these sorts of stories, you need to know what you're going for. Are you going for a sense of awe and wonder in your magic? Is that the scope of what you're trying to convey? Or are you looking to tell a story like I am often, which is, I'll actually have this in outlines. Hero finds clever solution to problem. Very frustrating thing to have in your outline when you get there and you realize you haven't thought of the clever solution to the problem. This has happened to me many times, but you don't need to know that. So those are a certain kind of story. And again, that's the kind of story I personally prefer and write. But if you don't, then go find stories from other people that convey this other thing. Go check out some Ursula K. Le Guin, read some Jemison, and maybe you'll get more of what you're hoping for. And again, nothing wrong with that. So that's my take on hard and soft magic systems. I hope you found it interesting and maybe enjoyable. And yeah, I'm going to try to stop saying as much in these videos, but I'm not promising anything. And I don't have the patience to edit them. I'll just apologize. This isn't in advance. This is in post-vance at the end. I don't know. We'll figure it out. So I hope you enjoyed. Go to my website, jcmburn.com. Sign up for my newsletter. If you sign up for my newsletter, I'll almost never send you one. So there's a little pitch. Read my books and watch the rest of my videos, because they're all going to be exactly like this one. If you stayed here till this far, till the end, you probably like it. Take care. Hope you have a great week.